The storm outside had been raging for hours, its roar battering against the thin walls of the aging apartment like a living beast desperate to break in. But for Rowan Hail, the downpour and thunder were nothing compared to the storm churning inside his chest. He stood in his dimly lit kitchen, hands trembling from exhaustion, body aching from another 17-hour day of double shifts, and eyes burning as he stared at the cracked screen of his old phone. The one message he should never have sent, the one that should have gone to his coworker, the one harmless line meant to lighten the crushing weight of their day, had gone to the last person he would ever dare joke with. Astra Varane, the cold, notorious, impossibly intimidating CEO of Varane, his brand new boss. And worse, it wasn't just any message. It was flirty. Ridiculously flirty. The kind of flirty that could ruin lives. His stomach twisted, his breath cut off, and the room swayed as he realized what he had done. And then came the sound that nearly stopped his heart entirely, a knock at the door. Firm, slow, deliberate, the kind of knock that didn't wait for permission. The kind of knock that announced power. She was here. Before we continue, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Vibes if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the magic of unexpected moments. Your support helps us bring these emotional stories to life. Rowan froze where he stood, unable to breathe, unable to think. How could the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation be standing outside his door 5 minutes after he sent that message? How could a woman as untouchable as Astra Varane cross the drenched city in the middle of a storm just to confront him? His trembling fingers fumbled on the doorknob, a sickening dread spreading through his limbs. He braced himself for fury. For humiliation. For the cold dismissal that would cost him the job he so desperately needed. But when he pulled open the door, his breath caught in confusion. Astra stood beneath the flickering hallway light, rain glistening on her dark coat, her hair slightly damp, her expression unreadable. Her eyes weren't cold, yet not warm. Simply, searching. It was surreal, like a scene from a film he didn't belong in. Rowan instinctively stepped back, trying to hide peeling paint, water stains, and the quiet signs of struggle that marked every corner of the apartment. Astra lifted one perfectly shaped brow, waiting, silently demanding an explanation. But before Rowan could speak, his daughter Mara peeked out from behind him. A thin, small 7-year-old wrapped in a faded blanket too light for the cold. Astra's gaze shifted to the girl and lingered there longer than Rowan expected. Something subtle, almost invisible, softened deep in her eyes. Astra Varane was not the type of woman who visited employees' homes. She was a figure the city whispered about, the ice queen of the executive world, the woman who turned entire markets with a single decision, the one whose expression never cracked, whose voice never shook. She was a storm wrapped in elegance. Yet now, instead of leaving, instead of issuing the cold reprimand Rowan expected, she stepped quietly inside as though pulled by something she didn't fully understand. The apartment was small and worn down, but there was warmth here, something real and lived in, something money couldn't buy. Drawings colored with shaky crayons covered the refrigerator door. Tiny shoes sat by the entrance. A faint cinnamon scent, from a homemade candle Rowan hoped would hide the mildew smell, filled the air. Astra absorbed it all with an aching slowness, as though cataloging something she had forgotten existed. Rowan rushed to apologize, stumbling over words, nearly choking on the panic in his chest. He tried to explain that the message was a mistake, meant for someone else, a joke to lighten the unbearable pressure of another awful day. He tried to tell her he would never, could never, speak to her that way intentionally. But as he spoke, something shifted in Astra. The ice in her gaze thinned. Her shoulders lowered by a fraction. It was subtle, but unmistakable. She was listening, not as a superior inspecting a subordinate, but as a human being hearing the quiet fractures in another. She asked him why he looked so exhausted. Why he was working double shifts. Why his eyes looked hollow. Why he still tried to make someone laugh in the middle of chaos. Rowan didn't want to tell her. He never wanted anyone to see how hard life had become. But Astra stood there, unblinking, unjudging, patient in a way that felt foreign. So eventually, piece by piece, Rowan told her the truth. He told her about Mara's mother who walked out 3 years earlier and never looked back. He told her about the unpaid rent, the endless bills, the nights he skipped meals so Mara wouldn't have to. He told her he took the job at Varane not out of ambition, but survival. He told her he barely slept, barely managed, barely held his world together. Astra listened without interrupting once. Every word he spoke chipped at the wall of frost built around her. What Rowan didn't know was that Astra had grown up in a mansion filled with everything except love. Her childhood was full of expensive toys, empty hallways, and parents too busy to notice her loneliness. She learned early that vulnerability was dangerous, affection was fleeting, and that emotional distance was the only armor that never cracked. She became cold because she had to. She became intimidating because softness never protected her. But in Rowan's tiny apartment, warm, messy, real, something loosened in her chest. When Mara tugged on her sleeve and showed her a crayon drawing, Astra knelt without hesitation. A billionaire CEO kneeling on a worn carpet in a stranger's small apartment as a child excitedly pointed at scribbles of color. And Rowan watched in stunned silence as Astra smiled, really smiled, for the first time he'd ever seen. Not the thin, controlled smile she wore in corporate meetings, but one that lit her entire face, fragile and bright. It startled him because it felt like seeing a part of her no one else had ever seen. As minutes passed, Astra took in everything Rowan tried to hide. The broken heater patched with tape, the mail stacked unopened because he couldn't bear the reminders of overdue notices, the single chair with a missing leg propped against the wall. She saw the way Rowan constantly checked on Mara. The quiet protectiveness, the tired affection, the desperate determination to keep her safe. She saw a man who didn't have much, but gave everything. A man the world might overlook, but whose heart was stronger than any storm. When Rowan apologized again for the flirty message, his face flushing in embarrassment, Astra surprised him by saying it wasn't the worst message she'd received. In fact, it was the first in years that made her laugh. Not in mockery, not in superiority, but with something like gratitude. She admitted, quietly, almost cautiously, that it reminded her she was still human. That for once someone saw her not as a machine built of steel and deadlines, but as a woman. A person. Someone who could be spoken to casually, accidentally, honestly. Someone who could be seen. For the first time in a long time, Astra didn't feel the weight of her title. She didn't feel the armor she wore every day. She felt normal. And it was terrifying. And comforting. And entirely new. Rowan offered to walk her to her car when she finally stood to leave, but she shook her head with a gentle firmness. She said she had come because she didn't want him to be afraid. Because the panic in his message sounded unlike anything she'd ever received. Because no one had ever looked so genuinely terrified after texting her. And because no one had ever spoken to her with honesty so raw it unsettled her. Later that night, after she left, Rowan sat on the couch, still feeling the warmth of her presence lingering in the room. Mara curled against his arm, her voice soft and sleepy as she whispered, "Daddy, she was nice." And Rowan felt something he hadn't felt in months, hope. A fragile but beautiful hope that maybe the world wasn't always cruel. Maybe kindness still found its way through storms. Maybe life still had unexpected chapters left for people like him. Astra drove through the rain alone, her fingers gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual, her heart oddly unsettled. She had built an empire through logic, discipline, and an unbreakable facade. Yet in one small apartment, a tired father and his brave little girl had cracked something open inside her. Something she didn't know she needed. Something she wasn't sure she could ever close again. And Rowan, as he tucked Mara into bed and watched the storm ease outside, let the silence settle into something peaceful. Something healing. Maybe life didn't always turn cruel moments into miracles, but just this once, it had. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Vibes. Your support helps this channel grow and helps us spread more uplifting stories to people who need them. Special request. Before the video ends, comment below and tell us which moment in the story moved you the most.